Hey guys, this is Matt again. Welcome to part 3 of the 3-part series of the CTS timing chain job on the 3.6 liter V6. After this part, basically we got the timing chains on, we got them aligned. Now we're going to do some cleanup on the timing chain cover and then the valve covers themselves, put in some new seals and some things like that. So stay tuned for how to put this back together right. Make sure you don't have any oil leaks, PCV issues, or any other small little tips that I throw in here that are going to make the job go easier. And of course, like I mentioned in part 2, sequentially, if you don't remember how stuff came apart in part 1, this is going to really help you guys put things back together faster, because you're not going to be putting one thing on over the top of something you should have put on first, and then you got to take it back off to put that back on. So hopefully this helps you guys out sequentially at least, and points you in the right direction to be able to get this job done a little bit faster at home. Okay, so what I do here is I just got a wire wheel on my drill. So now on the back of this timing cover, you can see where the satellite gasket is there. I use this style of wire brush on my drill, and I go around and I just clean all this up, and it'll help get all the RTV out of these grooves too. Sometimes you gotta use a pick tool to get the rest out, but for the majority you'll be able to get most of it out with this wire brush. So I got these grooves cleaned out, and then I went over and wire wheeled it again. Got all these little strips out of the centers of them. This is all going to go in the parts washer and get all this junk out of here. A little bit of antifreeze in there, as you can see. Get all that stuff out. Make sure that you pop all these seals out before you put it in the parts washer and get clean behind there. And then go ahead and scrape this off where your valve covers sit. And you can wire wheel once you get this crap off there too if you want, whatever you want to do. So just a reminder to clean that all up while you got it out, and then put it in the parts washer. So now that you got the timing chains all on and aligned, and you got your safety pins pulled, so now that you got your timing chains all aligned and you got your lock pins pulled out on all 3 tensioners, you can go ahead and remove these. You shouldn't need those on there anymore. After that, you got all those removed, you can go ahead and start to clean up the surface here where you're going to seal this up with RTV silicone sealant. I recommend you use something decent. Don't use that black silicone or any kind of cheap stuff that you can get. The stuff that I use is this right here. Right Stuff 1-minute gasket. I don't know, it works great. And if you're going to use something cheap, eventually it's going to end up leaking oil, and you're going to have some crankcase ventilation issues as well following with that. 34310 is the part number. Thermotex makes this. I don't know, it works awesome. But I'm using it on everything that I use RTV silicone on, from differential covers to valve covers to everything. But I want to point out a couple things here when you're going to put this timing cover on. Obviously you're going to put RTV on the cover and then lay the cover on. But what I like to make a note of is, you see right here in this area, that's where the head meets to the block. So you want to make sure you clean that really good with RTV and clean out that little galley above it to keep it from dripping down before you get the cover on. And then down here, you can see where the oil pan meets up to the bottom of the block. You want to put RTV there, you want to put some there. They're just seams that you want to make sure you get sealed up so they don't leak. Also right there where the head meets the block, and then here also where the head meets the block on both sides. You want to make sure that you just put a little bit on there, just so you make sure no matter what, you got some there, even if you do have it on the timing cover, just to cover your P's and Q's, I guess. And then other than that, I got the timing cover drying out right now over here. Actually by now, so I cleaned all the crevices in here, and I took a wire brushed all the loose RTV off of there, took it in the parts washer, and then I rinsed it off with water to neutralize any chemicals. And then I just dried it out, blew it off from the air hose. I'm going to pound some seals in there and kind of clean some of these holes out by hand, because they didn't come that clean in the parts washer. But you can see right here some of the built up oil deposits from not changing the oil. I'm going to clean that out of there really good, and then clean out these cam sensor holes so that they slide in there a little bit easier than they came out on the front main seal, and clean up some of that as well. And it should be ready to RTV and put back together. Okay, typically a seal like this, you can see the lips actually right here. You usually have the lip to the inside and go like this. These seals actually go like this for some reason, so pound in with the flat side out. This is be backwards, this is forwards. If that makes sense. Hopefully that helps you guys out a little bit. These are pretty simple to install. Just set the seal on there, tap it, get it kind of settle in there, tap it all the way around. And then what I do is I take a socket and set it on here, and I just tap it around the edges to kind of get it to tap down in there and make sure it's flush all the way down. Crankshaft seal, same thing. There you go, done deal. Alright, grab a clean rag, go ahead and wipe all the surfaces down on here, and then do the same on the engine like I showed you earlier. Next, install the satellite gasket. Notice there's a notch here at the top. Stick that in there, and then just follow the rest of the gasket around with your fingers. Get it into the grooves, and then you should be ready to go. Make sure it's seated in there good. Good deal. Now you're going to put RTV in here. You want to make sure you put RTV around here, all over here, or all around this whole thing, because you don't want oil leaking out. And then all the way around here, obviously. But just don't forget to get it around here, because there's a bolt that goes through there, and if you don't put RTV through there, even if that bolt's tight, it could start leaking oil around that bolt, so don't forget to do that. Now, like I said, make sure you RTV these areas. Down here, over here, and then there's 2 more spots down here. Get RTV on those as well. Alright, now we're going to put RTV on the cover. Should look something like that when you're done. You know, put a decent amount on there. Don't be stingy. But you don't need to waste it either. I'm going to let that set up for a couple minutes. And then go ahead and throw it on there, otherwise most of it will ooze right out. Some of it will actually stay in there if you let it set up a little bit. Okay, so now the RTV is set up, I'm going to go ahead and slap the cover on there. Have a couple bolts ready. Maybe have your impact with the right socket on it ready to go as well. Be careful, be patient. Slowly line it up, make sure there's nothing in the way. Once you drop one of the bolts ready, stab that sucker in a couple of bolts quick. Let her hang. It's kind of a big cover, so you're going to want to take your light and kind of go around, make sure you didn't pinch any wiring harnesses or anything in there weird. Pinching the bottom part, seating up to the rest of the block as well. Then you should be good to go. Just start hammering 13mm bolts into this cover. Now there was different lengths, longer and shorter in here when I took this apart, so I separated those. I'll put the short ones in first and the long ones second. Most of the long ones are here around this water pump. I think just to help assist sealing it with that satellite gasket to the block itself. Then I'm going to keep putting these bolts in here. I'm going to go around and tighten these bolts on. I'm not cranking any of these bolts super tight. I just kind of got them snug for now, but you get the gist of it. And I'm going to go around by hand and tighten all these by hand before I put the long ones in. Alright, timing cover's on. We're going to go ahead and put the crankshaft pulley on now. So then you're going to want to clean this off with some emery cloth and some cleaner, and then pre-lubricate it for that new seal. Go ahead and wiggle it onto the crankshaft there. So you're going to want to take your hammer like this, preferably a rubber mallet, and tap that crankshaft pulley on there quite a bit before the threads will reach. Make sure once it does get on far enough that you can get quite a few threads in there. At least 4 to 5 turns minimal before you can actually start turning with your impact to pull this thing on there, because it's still not a good idea to do it with your impact, but at the same time sometimes you don't have much of an option. Back on with your impact. Okay, here's the 2 seals that go onto this water outlet here on the front of the motor. You want to make sure you pop these gaskets in here and get this thing installed as soon as possible, because this RTV right here from the timing cover will dry and it'll fight you. See the lip RTV there? It'll fight you when you're trying to put that on after it dries, and you have to sit there and cut it off with a razor blade, and it's a pain in the ass. So just make sure that when you put this in there, put a little grease on that O-ring, or you can use RTV, whatever you want, just to make sure it doesn't tear when it goes in there. Because I only have one, so I'm not messing around. And go ahead and tighten that down. And move on to the next. You probably want to go through and wipe these valve covers off, clean off all the oil residue. And then where these seams are, you want to wipe that RTV off, put some fresh stuff down for the valve covers to seal up. I'm still going to take those vice screws off, but I want to clean up all this crap so the valve cover seals good, and especially down here where they always leak. And then we'll get those put on there, get the motor covered up. You want to go get the oil out of these crevices in the valve cover gasket, and then once you do that, go ahead and put your new gasket in. Put on the passenger side, or sorry, excuse me, driver's side valve cover. Careful not to drop any bolts down in the engine, and that you don't get any wiring connectors stuck underneath the valve cover itself too, because it's not very hard to do. There we go. Alright, now we'll do the passenger. A couple dabs of RTV on these timing cover seams. Valve cover, make sure there's no wires in the way or nothing. Slide that into place. There you go. I'm going to tighten your valve cover bolts 10 mil. Okay, valve covers are on. I think I'm going to install these oil control solenoids. So this thing's going to go on the top here. But you can see that there's pretty rusty around here, so I'm going to take these over to the wire wheel and the bench grinder and clean that shit up. But first I'm going to wrap a rag around this so I don't get crap all over these, because these are really small orifices and you don't want it getting clogged over. You're going to be buying new ones. So over time these actually will get rusted and pitted pretty bad. So what I do is I wire wheel them off, like I said, and then I just put a thin layer of RTV on there. And then typically if they're new solenoids, I'll just put a little grease on there. But I don't want these to leak, so I'm going to use a little bit on the edge here to help pre-lubricate this thing when it goes into the seal so it doesn't tear the seal. Just like that. I want to put my cam position sensors in there, and then we're going to put all the bolts in. Now I just wipe these off and I put a little bit of grease on the O-ring, and then just go ahead and put them in like this, give them a little bit of a twist. Once it hits that grease, it'll slide right in. Simple. I'm going to reinstall this stud right here, the E12 stud. That's for your power steering pump. Go ahead and reinstall that 15mm for this power steering pump bracket. There's another one that goes right here, both the same length. And then don't forget about that one way back here behind the pump. There's that one buried right there. Right there. Right there, right in the middle of the screen. Tighten this bracket down with the speed wrench right here. And then it fits in right here. Good to go. Tighten your other two 15-downs on the side of this bracket, and you'll be good to go on that. Okay, now we're going to install this power steering pump pulley. So we'll take the pulley, set it on the shaft there, get it kind of started on there a little bit. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get the tool, spray a little penetrating oil on the threads of this bolt. So you can get that thing started in there. So I didn't really catch that, but I had to take my thread chaser tool and go in here and clean up the threads to get this thing to start in here without stripping out. So I did that, and then I just, once I got it started in there about this far, or 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, I held this still and then I turned this with this bearing on here to make this swivel, and I pressed the pulley onto the shaft. Simple as that. These cam position sensor bolts in. Long ones go in the cam sensors, and the short ones go in all the control valves. And then just tighten those down. That's done. Next up, you got this goofy bracket here that goes behind the alternator. So kind of want to lift up the alternator, pull it forward, slide the bracket in, and put your alternator back up in that bracket. Basically, I don't know if you can really see that with my arm in the way, but that's the gist of it. And then we got to remember to slide that way back in there and line up that 13mm bolt in the back. Looks like mine slid out of the bracket, so I got to push it into the bracket. Get it back in there a little farther behind this other bracket. Oh no, that's the radiator hose. Water outlet. It's kind of tough when you got the alternator in there, you're fighting the alternator, but if you put one of these bracket bolts in, that should help hold it for you. So I think if I can get this alternator bracket up here and get this bolt started, it'll kind of hold everything into place. This isn't the right bolt, I'm just using it for temporary right now. Let's get these other bolts started. Okay, looks like I used the wrong bolt here. Switch these two out. Okay, now this longer one looks like it goes in the bottom here. We'll tighten those down. Millimeters. I'm just going to snug this so it's kind of lined up. That way it's not too tight, so I can still get that 13 started on the back side of the motor, or side of the motor. Back here. So this 13 right here goes onto that bracket, and then the 315s, one there, and then the one down there on the bottom. And then tensioner's on. Now you can put your alternator bolts in, bolt it back onto the bracket. Okay, so here's this coolant hose bracket. That goes into that alternator bracket. It's 13mm bolt. Make sure you don't forget to put that in there. That hose is gonna be bouncing around. I lift the vehicle up to get it from underneath, sticking my arm to the lower control arm, and that bolts in. I'm just gonna give it a snug real quick, and then let the car back on. Sorry. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten down this 15mm serpentine belt tensioner. There's a notch in there right there with my thumb. You want to make sure you line that up correctly to the timing cover, or your belt won't tighten up right. So we'll get that lined up. That should be good and tight. And then you can go ahead and put your belt on. Over here, and you can start plugging in your oil control solenoids, cam sensors. Here's our oil control solenoid. This is for your vacuum pump. That's my girlfriend revving her car up out there. And then I got this belt right here. I want to put on because this is the inside belt first. It's going to go around here like this, and then this is going to come up here once I pull the tensioner. You get the idea. Okay, after you got your inside belt on, make sure to route it like this. You move on to the outside belt here. So what you want to do is just string this along the pulleys. Oops. Basically, I already put the water pump pulley on before I started the video, so that's not really helping much to demonstrate that. But this is going to go down here around the crankshaft like this. And it's going to come back around like this. And then it's going to reach out to the alternator here. So pull the tensioner, route it over the alternator, release the tension, remove your ratchet. So now we're going to reinstall this radiator cooling fan. Just be careful of these hoses when you drop it in here. Alright, and then the second thing is make sure you got the right bolts for this fan, because if they're too long to go right through and into the radiator, and you'll have a mess. Go ahead and tighten down those radiator bolts. One last one here. Perfect. Oh, I got one down there already tightened. So, plug in your cooling fan wires. That tab in there. We're going to reinstall the auxiliary water pump down here now. What it looks like is what it looks like. It goes down here like this. Remember, the bracket was broken, so I have to remount it somehow. This lower hose is that auxiliary water pump connects onto right here. The upper hose connects onto the radiator right here. And then we're going to grab pliers and tighten those down. And this water pump is actually supposed to be mounted right here, so I guess the tabs kind of hold it, but I'm going to remount it so it's better. And then obviously don't forget to plug in the connector to it so it actually functions. You know, can check engine lights and whatnot. So that's on there tight. This radiator hose can go in here for the upper hose. And then while we're at it, this hose over here that we tucked away actually routes over the top right here. It goes onto this water outlet that we put on earlier. So now I'm going to go through the pliers and make sure I put all these clamps on so I don't forget any. Once you got that out of the way, you can go ahead and let these connectors down here and pull your wiring over for your cam position sensors and your oil control solenoids. Go ahead and snap those into place here. And this is going to go to your throttle body, of course. And remember, this snapped out of that bracket on the bottom of the intake. Oh, get this button out of here. Okay, now we're going to take this bungee cord off this power steering pump. We're going to slide that into position here.
Remember that just went over the top of this section, then bolted down, and then that the vacuum pump bracket actually went over the top of that. So there's a 10mm bolt that goes in here to hold that right there, and then the bracket for the water or vacuum pump. Remember how this goes back on? There's a big hole right there, and then there's a bolt hole underneath there. This big hole is going to go ahead and sneak underneath this power steering return line here on this reservoir. It's going to slide onto that stud that we use the E12 to bolt onto. And then there's a 13mm bolt that goes underneath there, and then an 18mm nut that goes on that stud. And that holds that in place. Alright, once you've tightened those two bolts down, go ahead and plug that vacuum pump back in. And then this here, oops, this is actually supposed to be routed underneath the air conditioning line, so I'm going to reroute that hose. But other than that, let's see here. Valve cover ground wasn't it. Once you get your vacuum pump plugged in, you're going to want to go ahead and install this vacuum hose for the vacuum pump. Make sure that snaps on there. And then this goes back here. This will go into the intake, and then make sure back here that you plug this grommet back into the brake booster, or you won't have any power brakes. So there's that. I'm going to reroute this underneath this hose, and then we should be done with the hoses as far as that goes. There's 2 more PCV hoses and the purge line. Then after you're done with that, you're going to want to go ahead and install your PCM back in position here. Pull these connectors up out of the way. And then slide these back onto these hooks. Should be good to go. And then put these clamps in here. Lock those down. There, that's squared away. And then we're going to move on to putting the coils back in and put the intake on. But first we're going to look down the plenum and see how good our induction cleaning did before we started this job. Okay, so right now we're just kind of taking a quick peek at how much carbon's on the valves and these intake valves. These aren't too horrible, honestly. This is after the induction cleaning, so I mean, it's going to be a lot better than most of them that you're going to see. There's probably chunks on these. I mean, you can actually see the valve itself there. A lot of times there's so much carbon built up on these, you can't even see the actual valve itself. So, considering how clean this one is, this ain't your typical, how they typically look. But, you get an idea anyways. Go ahead and reinstall your coils. Put your connectors on there. Snug those down. Remember, you have to push those to lock them. Pretty straightforward. Oh, this one's... Make sure they're unlocked before you try locking them as well. This connector goes to the purge solenoid. Make sure you plug in your fuel injectors back here. And then tighten down these 10mm for your coil pack. Okay, now I just installed this hose here to the valve cover. It's a breather hose. Runs up right here to the front and then it plugs into the air boot. I'm not sure if it goes right here or right there. We'll find out once you get the boot on there. And I think now it's time to finally install intake manifolds. Make sure you plug in your injector connectors back here. There's one here and one here. It's a lot easier to do now than it is later. And then, yeah, we should be ready to pop the intake on this bad boy. So this is the bottom of the intake. I scraped that off and I wiped it down. Now I'm going to clean out this throttle body bore because it's full of crap in there. Alright, we got her nice and clean now. Throw that back in the car. So I cleaned up the bottom of the intake, and I have a new intake gasket down. It's not worth reusing them. I remember I left this bolt in here, so I didn't have to take the wiper cowl off, so I'm just going to have to work around that a little bit as they go in. So just keep that in mind when you're putting it on if you did this way. Don't forget to install this vacuum hose off your brake booster, up to your vacuum pump back onto the intake manifold. I got all those bolts tight. And remember there was this bracket back here we had to reconnect onto the back of the intake, just 2 13 mils. Purge solenoid bolt. Then go ahead and snap that onto the intake once you tighten all 6 of these bolts here. Then there are 2 13s in the back. And then you should just be about ready to rock. Don't forget to plug your purge solenoid in as well. And then we're going to look into installing the air boot. Don't be like me and forget to plug in your throttle body connector. It's kind of a tight fit to get this thing through here. So this goes into the center throttle body here. And then on the back side of this, the connector here plugs in onto here. Push it till you hear it click. Make sure the safety tab's locked down. And there's 2 10mm bolts that go in here to hold the intake bracket. Got the throttle body plugged in, we got the bracket tight. Now we're gonna go ahead and stick this air boot in here, in this air box first, in the air boot. Also, don't forget to put your PCV hose onto this rear valve cover right here. Just snaps down on there like that, and then this comes around here. Then it pops in your intake manifold right there. So simple as that. That's that. Now
now let's just get this airbox.
So there's a little rubber stopper that goes into the front of the core support there, and then over here is a 10 mil that goes and holds this airbox down. And then your fresh air intake should be right there. Go ahead and install the upper half of this airbox, T25 Torx, 3 of them, tighten that down. Don't forget to plug in your mass airflow sensor connector. Looks like this hose actually goes over here. It's just going to line up with the boot, so that's going to go down here. But actually, you can go underneath here like that. Probably, I don't know. Tighten down your air boot clamps. Make sure you install this rubber grommet here. This PCV hose into the rubber air boot. And that pretty much buttons up the job. I'm going to go ahead and put this strut bar on here. Both sides here. And then I did end up finding the washer that fell off. Right here. Put these nuts on here. 18 millimeter bolt. And then always check the column. Make sure you don't leave any tools up here like this, because I've lost many tools that way and it's stupid. They're not cheap. And then I got some tabs up here from when I took that plastic off the front right here when I had the headlight out, so that's not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and button this up here, put some oil in this motor, start it up, make sure nothing blows up or breaks or whatever and stuff like that. And then this thing should be pretty much ready for a test drive once I get that coolant blood out of the system, or air blood out of the cooling system, excuse me. When you're putting oil in these cars, make sure it's Dexos approved. I mean, that's a pretty common thing by now that people are pretty used to using that stuff, but yeah, make sure you're using Dexos, because if you're not, you could have problems with your variable valve timing if you're throwing that P008 code, or 0008 code. That could be something to do with the oil viscosity. I've seen a lot of hits on that too. People have changed the oil, use the right stuff, and the code goes away and never comes back. So just be ahead of the game and don't use the wrong stuff right off the bat. It'll save you a lot of time. Alright guys, so this pretty much buttons up the 3.6 timing chain job. I got everything pretty much put back on, connected. I don't have any antifreeze in the engine just because I want to make sure that it runs right first before I waste any antifreeze. Which means just initial start, let some oil pressure build and see if the motor runs correctly. I'm going to go ahead and start this thing up, so I'm going to leave the camera sit here. And you guys can basically listen to this thing rattle when it initially starts, and then listen to the sound of it quiet up once the oil pressure takes over the timing chain tensioners. I'm sure you guys heard the initial startup rattle. It sounds pretty rough when you first start it. That's going to be pretty typical with no oil pressure, especially being I drained the motor down overnight. It took a while to get oil primed up. You could crank it over and prime the oiling system, but I don't think that that's something that you have to worry about. I've done quite a few of these and I haven't worried about it too much. Other than that, yeah, that's basically a wrap for the timing chains. I'm going to check the oil and make sure it's running good. Check for any check engine lights, see if I forgot to plug any sensors or connectors in anywhere. And then I'm going to go ahead and start adding some antifreeze and let this thing bleed out. Alright, overall with the top end induction cleaning and the timing chains we did to this vehicle, I had previously done coils with spark plugs. That was on a different video that I didn't get uploaded, but my SD card crashed, so that's an idiot. Anyways, so that's pretty much it. Everything's buttoned up here. I'm just letting the coolant bleed out and getting some heat in the cab here, and then I got a couple plastic things to put on, but I'm going to pull this bumper off and replace this broken grill. And then I'm replacing the hood because the front end of it's crushed in. You can see a little bit bent up there. And then I have to do some brakes on this thing. And a couple of small things to fix the door handle. I got to reinstall this headlight because whatever, when it turns back and forth as you turn the steering wheel, wasn't working. So I fixed that, I think. I haven't test drive that yet. There's a lot of corrosion in this connector on this headlight. So I cleaned that up because there was a crack in the headlight lens. So it was getting moisture inside. Clean that up as well. Got a couple small other things to do on here just to button it up cosmetically. Clean it up a little bit on the inside and everything. But basically it's pretty much ready to sell if somebody was interested in buying it. So as you guys can see, when I started the car up, it rattled pretty excessively. That's something you want to make sure that your timing chains are tight. Like I said, I kind of pulled in the tensioners to make sure that the spring adjustment was as tight as it could be until the oil pressure took over the control of the
timing chain tensioners holding the guides against the chain to hold it tight so it doesn't have that rattle and slap. It's very important to make sure that you have oil in the motor and an adequate amount when you're doing that too. As you could hear when that thing started, it rattled for quite a bit before it got oil pressure primed up to those timing chain tensioners. And the other thing, you heard the vehicle misfire a couple times. The vehicle was excessively low on gas. I should have poured some gas in it. It wasn't even enough to make it to a gas station, so you heard a couple of pops in there. I shut the vehicle off right away, went to the gas station, got 5 gallons of gas and poured it in there. But at the same point, when you hear that rattle, that's something that's pretty normal on these, so just be ready for that. And yeah, that's basically it. That pretty much wraps it up for the timing chain job on the 3.6. Hey guys, this is Matt again. Thanks for staying tuned through all 3 parts of this series. I really appreciate that you guys stuck through it. Hopefully that it provided some value for you guys to be able to put the car together or take it apart, whatever, easier, and you found some pointers or some tips in this video. If you did, comment in the comment section please and let me know what helped you the most in this video, and if I could make some future videos on something that you guys may need something repaired or something that's a common problem on a lot of cars that are on the road today, something along those lines. Go ahead and leave it in the comment section. I'll do my best to get my hands on one and tear into it and set up a video and, you know, put it out there for you guys to watch. But other than that, I appreciate you guys sticking through all 3 parts. You know, it's getting down and dirty from tearing it apart in part 1 to taking the chains off and putting them back on and being confident they're in the right positions before you put the timing cover on, because you're pretty deep in that motor and it's a lot of work to get where you're at. And then also part 3 for reassembling everything, cleaning it up and doing a nice job so that you don't have any oil leaks if you're doing it for yourself or a customer or whatever the situation is. I just want to say thank you guys for watching, and I really appreciate your views and your subscriptions and your comments. Really mean a lot to me. Go ahead and leave those below, and subscribe if you guys, like I say, if you guys want to see some more videos of stuff that can save you some money, or, you know, just car hacks or tricks or tips or whatever. Just subscribe to the page, because I'll just keep uploading more and more videos of stuff like this, because this is what I do for a living, this is what I do because I love it, and this is what I do because it makes me money. So if you guys are interested in the same kind of stuff, then go ahead and subscribe, because there'll be more to follow for sure. Thank you guys for watching.